Listen to a world leader say he can do whatever he wants.
Then I have an Article 2 where I have the right to do whatever I want as president, but I don't even talk about that.
Just did. Now, that was the language of a dictator, and that's why he shouldn't even talk like that. But it's not a fact. The United States Constitution does not grant the power to the president to do whatever he wants. That's why we have a system of checks and balances. President Trump's comments come on the cusp of a make-it-or-break-it moment for House Democrats, in my opinion. I believe that Mr. Mueller being on the stand is something that should have happened a long time ago. It's good for all of us, but it will be a big moment for the Democrats. California Congresswoman Katie Porter is here to talk strategy, law, and more. Good to have you. Good to have you in person. First of all, am I wrong, Professor, that tomorrow matters for the Democrats? You can't keep saying, well, we think he did all of these things wrong and abused his power, but we're not going to do what the Constitution tells us to do. We're going to do it this other way.
I would say that I would reframe it and say that tomorrow really matters for Americans. I think if we start framing this in terms of party ideology, we're really missing the issue of what we're grappling with here. What we're talking about is what are the strictures, the rules that our founders of our country put in place to ensure that we stayed a vibrant democracy and we never became a dictatorship. So this is not just a big day for Democrats. This is a big day for Republicans. It's a big day for independents. It's a big day for our country to understand what's going on.
No question. And most people didn't read it, and I totally get why. Not only is it dense.
Well, it was not. It was boring.
Well, look, yeah, a lot of it's boring. I found it pretty fascinating, but this is what we do, especially the first part. Second part was obstruction.
Yeah,
first part
volume 2 was better.
Right, but, you know, I get why they didn't read it. For Mr. Mueller to give them the information, people are going to hear things. They didn't read the book, but they're going to get to see the movie. But for you guys, just like you did in your own personal case, you weren't sure. You wanted to talk to the people at home. You wanted to examine the evidence as a lawyer and as a professor. But then you made a call. The party has to do the same thing because there are too many Democrats who say, I think the president abused his power. I think he obstructed justice. I think he committed impeachable offenses. Then do what the Constitution tells you to do, or don't, but make a decision.
Yeah. No, look, I think that's an important point. And, you know, my own thinking was once I had studied the issue, once I had had a chance to read the Mueller report, once I had realized that very clearly Mr. Mueller states there is substantial evidence of at least 4 counts of obstruction of justice. And he lays out what those 4 counts are. And tomorrow, I hope America tunes in and understands that obstruction of justice, there is substantial evidence there. And that is a federal crime. Each one of those 4 counts is a federal crime. And the Mueller report further says there's some evidence of an additional 10 counts of obstruction of justice. What I wanted to say is in response to your earlier comment about the president saying that, you know, he has unlimited power.
He doesn't?
He does not. And I say this to you as someone who has graded a lot of law students in my life. That is an F answer, like an absolute F. And in fact, I teach the Constitution to Boy Scouts. I'm a merit badge counselor for the Citizenship and the Nation Merit Badge. And one of the things that I drive home to the Scouts, and these are 12 and 13 and 14-year-old boys who understand this concept that the president doesn't, is that the power, the largest sets of powers in our Constitution reside with the legislature. They reside with Congress. Why? Because Congress is the closest to the people, right? And so this idea that Article 2 is somehow some limitless residual pot of power is simply a fiction, and it's something that he's simply saying and trying to make it true by repeating it.
And that often works very well for him with a certain portion of the country. If you were there tomorrow asking questions, what do you think is absolutely vital that needs to come from Mr. Mueller?
Yeah, no, I think I would ask whether after doing his report and spending the time and using the resources he did, whether he can exonerate the president, yes or no.
What do you think he says?
He's going to have to say no. He cannot exonerate the president because that is what the report says. So he said he's going to stick to his report, that his report is his testimony. And the report says very clearly, this is verbatim, essentially, it says, if we could clearly state
we would.
We would.
Right.
And we cannot
There's a lot of doublespeak in there, though. There's doublespeak about why
so I would ask him in a yes or no format. I would simply say,
that's the key.
Can you exonerate, after having done your report, are you able to exonerate the president? And he's going to have to say no if he's consistent.
So you have to go yes or no answers, because if you ask for an opinion on something or a rationale that goes to an opinion, I think you're going to wind up having a short day.
And then I think you just ask, did you find evidence of obstruction of justice, acts of obstruction of justice, yes or no?
The other side's going to say, but enough to be a crime?
Well, but listen, obstruction of justice is a crime. Let's be clear. It's not this is not a sliding scale. There's not like kind of half murdered, all right? You either obstructed justice or you did not obstruct
You could have been endeavoring to obstruct, but wouldn't the other side push on the point of, but was it enough to charge?
Well,
was it a little bit of proof or was it a lot of
This is a great point. I think this is something I kind of reinforce to people when I'm talking to them in my district is what is the role of the House of Representatives versus the role of the Senate? And this was really carefully thought about by our founders. The role of the House is to conclude, is there enough evidence that there needs to be an evidentiary trial held by the Senate? It's not our job in the House of Representatives to ultimately remove the president from office. It's our job to make a decision about whether or not there's enough evidence to impeach. Impeach does not mean to remove from office.
100%. That's why I don't
send it to the Senate.
Now, you and I had this discussion once before when you were figuring out what to do, and I had a lot of respect for your deliberative process on it. You were like, I gotta make a decision on this. If that is the role, and that is the role, it's in the Constitution, that's what an impeachment inquiry is, not this scramble of oversight hearings that are going in 8 different directions at once. It doesn't mean that you're impeaching the president. It means that you're doing the fact-finding mission the way the Constitution tells you. All right, one other thing. I'm not giving you my taxes because it's a violation of my First Amendment right.
No, not correct.
But I was a private citizen when I was paying those taxes. And
Too bad. You chose to run for president. When you ran for president, there was an existing law on the books, a law that dates back, by the way, to 1924, that said that the Ways and Means Committee could request the taxes of the president, and they would have to be provided. So President Trump knew this law existed when he ran. He said,
hold on a second. You think the president knew that law existed when he ran?
Ignorance is no defense.
The man who just said Article 2 lets me do whatever I want to do under the Constitution?
Ignorance of the law is no defense.
Okay.
So he probably, maybe I would not want to speculate as to what the president does and does not understand about the rule of law, because I think that would be hard to know where to stop.
But there is no law that says, as president, I must give over my taxes. It's a custom. I gave you way more than the FEC wants.
Incorrect. There is a law that says, upon request from the chairperson of the Ways and Means Committee, the IRS shall furnish the president's taxes. And this is a law enacted in 1924. It's an old law. It was enacted in the wake of the Teapot Dome scandal. And it was enacted to make sure that Congress had the ability to do oversight. Because at the time, and still today, the president has the ability to get any of our taxes. He controls the IRS.
So you say that case goes nowhere?
No, he's going to lose this case on the federal tax returns, absolutely.
Professor,
thank you so
very
much.
Appreciate you being with us, Congresswoman. We look forward to see what happens tomorrow. Have you back on the show, figure out what it means.
Thank you so much.
All right. So